You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting UnderTheHoodShow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Hello, welcome to Under the Hood. I am Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
From the Autotempest.com studios, all the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show, 866-594-4150. No Chris today. He's playing hooky for a good reason.
He had a thing come up at the last minute here, so we are happy to oblige to be able to let him be able to have that freedom.
Very last minute, but
quite last minute.
But that's okay. Hang in there, Chris. We're all here for you.
We got your back.
Oh, man, I tell you what, there were some crazy stuff going on out there in the news. So Chevy Bolt, not to be confused with the Chevy Volt.
Pick your right letters when you're doing Wheel of Fortune on that one.
You know what, when I heard about this, I had to go look it up because I was a little confused. First, I said, the Chevy Volt, because they mentioned do not put your Chevy Bolt with a B, EV, in the garage and charge it for fear that there could be a fire event. There have been a couple only so far, but a couple is enough. So if you've got one, park it. Don't be charging it, and then get it in your dealer as soon as you can.
And if you look at the difference between the Volt and the Bolt, it's a V and a B. Well, here's the thing: the event that happened, I don't know if you know this or not, but it was a United States congressman.
What was it?
That had a car start on fire.
That'll wake you up, won't it?
And he was one of the people that has been really pushing on the electric vehicle stuff, and he actually was one of the ones that had his electric vehicle start on fire. And they showed a picture of it. I don't know. When you brought that up, it was just flashing in my mind. I've got to find that story, but it was a blue Bolt, and they showed it kind of crispy in certain areas, but it started on fire. And so that was a real-life event for someone that's showing that there are some challenges yet, no different than any other vehicle. We got an employee of ours that had their internal combustion engine car start on fire in their driveway this week. So it's not just because it was electric. Things happen. And so we've got to just figure it out.
Well, they had the cruise control issue with the Fords for a long time where they wanted you to disconnect that thing because there was power going through the switch under the hood all the time. So they put that brake interlock in there and put a fuse on it just in case there was an issue with it. But yeah, things happen.
You never know, but so there's a lot going on in that regard. When you mentioned electric vehicles, Russ, there was one electric vehicle story that definitely caught my eye. Well, there's more than one because there's a bunch of them out there, but from Automotive News, I'm reading, if you see me shaking the paper here, but did you know?
I do. I see you shaking the paper there.
Kitchen sink. You say it's got everything but the kitchen sink. You've heard that term many times.
Did they include a kitchen sink in something now?
They have.
Not an RV?
In the Rivian and their electric pickup.
Sure.
Has an option where you can get the kitchen sink.
Oh man, that's cool.
They've got a tunneled cargo area that is behind the rear door in this vehicle, and in that area they have this sink that you can fold up, fold down, and slide into the vehicle, and it comes out and has a 1,400 watt burner on it. And you can actually have a kitchen beside your vehicle. And so this was the The Rivian Rescue, the Camp Kitchen, they call it. The $5,000 option is fully equipped, self-contained cooking center stored in the Rivian's gear tunnel, a space between the cab in front of the bed that is accessed through a door on the side of the truck. So you can access it externally, just like a camp kitchen on a camper.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
The Camp Kitchen slides in and out of the gear tunnel. It has a 1,440-watt, two-burner, induction-heated cooking surface so campers can cook outdoors without worry that high winds could blow flames from a campfire into their flammable brush. The kitchen is powered by the truck's battery pack. Rivian also thought about taking care of the dirty dishes. The Camp Kitchen comes with a 4-gallon water tank and pump, spray faucet, and collapsible sink. And so this is one of the options that can be included with that. So they also have some other stuff you can get: 4 mugs, silverware, coffee grinder. And the launch edition is supposed to go into production this month, but the full production is slated to begin later this year with sales starting in January.
That's pretty cool.
So it's coming right along here, so I can show that on the picture for
we got a call coming in right now. Let's go to John. John in Minnesota with an 02 Ram. How you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty good. Funny you guys bring up that Camp Kitchen. I actually, my daughter just sent me a video of that.
Oh, she did.
And
she thought it was pretty cool.
She thought it was awesome, and it is. I mean, it is that whole gear tunnel thing is meant to be super multi-purpose. You can do all kinds of different stuff with it.
I think you could probably hide contraband in there if you wanted to. So they got to watch out for that.
You could hide a body in there. I mean, it's big.
It's getting worse. We should probably stop coming up with ideas.
So I got this 02 Ram, and it's got the bigger engine. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's the 4.9, but it's the bigger engine that was pre-Hemi. And the problem I've got is when it goes to idle, it just wants to die. And it's not all the time. It just happens sometimes. And when you're driving, I mean, if you try to give it a little bit of gas to bring it up, it bogs down further. And the only thing you can do is pretty much, if you floor it, she'll jump forward then.
What you've got in there, that bigger motor, is the 5.9 most likely, because before they went to all the 7s, they used different variables. They had 5.2, 5.9, and so it'd be the 5.9.
Yeah, it's the 5.9. I just couldn't remember for sure.
So that's the old school 360 with the fuel injection on top of it. And so when you mash on it, sorry, I cut you off there. What's it doing?
Like I said, when you mash on it, then it gets up and goes.
I wonder if it could be fuel pressure related. You could have the fuel pressure.
I have tested it. I have tested that. It's in the low 50s.
When have you checked though? Have you checked it when it's actually duplicating the issue? So connect a gauge to it,
yes.
Drive it down the road.
Yeah.
It
doesn't. I mean, it'll do it in the driveway. I mean, it'll do it in park. It'll do it in drive.
Oh.
It's random. It just happens. And I've replaced darn near every sensor on the thing, which has helped its performance. I mean, when we bought it, we only bought it about a month ago. And, I mean, this thing couldn't get out of its own way. It had nothing for acceleration. And so we've replaced the MAF sensor on that one.
Mass airflow?
Or actually MAP sensor, or the pressure sensor. I can't remember which one. It's the air pressure sensor. It's not airflow.
MAP sensor.
MAP sensor, throttle position sensor. I mean, I've replaced pretty much the only thing I haven't been able to do, and I don't have a decent scanner, is the one thing I'm concerned about is possibly temperature.
Well, that's a good thought, because if you have a temperature reading that's incorrect, if you have a temperature, let's say it thinks the engine is warmer than it is or way colder than it is, it can either flood it out or starve it for fuel. That is a main input to the computer, along with that airflow, as to how much fuel to deliver. Also, oxygen sensors. Now, here's a question for you. When you first start this thing up, like right away on a cold start, does it work okay for a minute or so?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
then it's possible it's running fine when it's in open loop, which means it's not reading any of the oxygen sensors. Once it goes to closed loop, if you had a scanner and watched it, and the second it switches to closed loop, if it starts running horribly, that's a good indication that the vehicle is having a closed loop issue, and the fact that like it's not reading the oxygen sensors right. And you could have a bad oxygen sensor, or even more than one. So it's very possible that's what's going on there. So
that makes some sense, but they're a nightmare. I tried to get it off, and it's just a nightmare.
For us to
diagnose I may have to just replace the whole pipe.
Well, so when you've got an oxygen sensor that is stuck in a pipe and you go to take it out and you can't, or it just breaks off, there's a couple things you can do. You can either replace that pipe, but a lot of people in shops, what we'll do is we'll just leave that sensor in. If we can't get it out at all, as long as it's sealed well, we'll drill another hole right next to it, so it's not interfering with the
stream. You got to have clean airflow towards it.
So we'll move it like 90 degrees over, drill a hole, and then they sell little weldable bungs for these things. We weld them right to the pipe and screw another one in.
I like it.
It's an
I could hear your smile.
yeah. Because this thing is it's been kicking my butt, and that's been one of the thoughts was the oxygen sensor, but I just haven't been able to do anything about it.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate the call. Thanks very much.
All right. You guys have a wonderful day.
All right. You too. Take care.
It's always interesting when you can get told something that you just don't know about that helps your life incredibly. And that just happened.
That's for sure. That's for sure. We're going to take a short break. We will be right back on Under the Hood in just about a minute or so.
Prepare to learn something. You're going Under the Hood.
Welcome back to Under the Hood from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. I am Russ Evans, and that is Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
Everybody needs a good tune-up.
Never hurts. Never hurts.
Think about that. When was the last time you got a tune-up or knew somebody, a family member that says, hey, I got to go get my car tuned up, whatever.
I don't think that conversations came up lately that I can think of. We've had some vehicles where we've asked to have them inspected and making sure, check for fluids, kind of give them the once over on when the last time that there was a flush done, say on a oil system or a coolant system. Maybe consider checking the differentials, because that's something that gets missed a lot, is those small differentials that are in the all-wheel drives, the carrier assemblies that are in the front of a four-wheel drive, the rear third member differentials that are in the independent rear suspension cars. Those are things that often get missed. So we encourage people to get those because the fluid reservoirs are so small. What they use in there, the amount of fluid in them is so small. If you get a leak, it doesn't take long to kill them. So we really try to inspect those things. But as far as an actual tune-up, it's been, it's been a while since we had spark plugs in that one. It's probably time to switch those out. And then sometimes you'll choose on your coil packs and your boots and that kind of stuff. That's a common thing.
We just don't seem to go in unless there's an actual issue. If we've got a check engine light flashing or on or something, then we're going to go in. But usually even that, if it's running rough. I get a call for a tune-up maybe once a year. They call me and say, hey, I need to get my car tuned up. Like, well, what are your symptoms? Well, I don't have any. It's just been a while. But that's only once a year.
Would the tune-up be equivalent to if someone wanted to do a professional fuel injection cleaning?
That's part of it.
So if somebody said today on a modern fuel-injected car, said, Russ, I want a tune-up, how would you explain to them and what would you offer to them?
Well, Shannon, what you're going to need to do is come in and we're going to inspect your car because we don't want to do too much or too little to this. We're going to check your spark plugs, see what the condition of those is. They may not be time to replace them. Sometimes they'll last much longer than what you think, and they're super expensive. Your coil boots may or may not need to be replaced. We'll look and see the condition of your intake system. Maybe we're going to need to do an intake system cleaning, fuel filter if it has one. We'll check your belts and hoses. Basically, we're just going to check your car over, Shannon, and see what it needs and only recommend the things that need to be done now. And maybe it needs some fluids done, but a lot of times you get these 100,000 mile maintenance, 150, 200, whatever that the manufacturers are saying, and you don't need half the stuff. Or you need something else that's way more important. You may need nothing on that list, but you may need a ball joint or a tie rod in because it's ready to fall off and cause severe damage to you.
So that's the conversation that would take place, and then it would kind of go from there.
Exactly. Well, we got a caller coming in. We're going to talk to Jamie in Minnesota. Hey, Jamie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
We are wonderful today. We're doing well, even though Chris isn't here. We're just we're going to muddle our way through and try to pay attention to answering callers as well as playing with this board. Even though I put this thing together, I still. And still, sometimes it intimidates me here. So there's this button here and that button there. But you're on the phone, so we're good. What's up with your 01 F-150?
Well, I've been having problems with it with high idling speed, and started a few years ago. And I noticed like I could be driving it with my foot off the gas, and it would idle so fast I could go like about 25 or 30 miles an hour
Cruise
at idle speed. And so I looked up some things online of what to try, and the first thing I tried was replacing the can't think offhand here, not the throttle position sensor, but the idle air control valve. Yep, I did that. And it seemed to help. And then about a year later, it started doing the same thing over again. So I thought, well, was that a faulty part? So I replaced it again. And it really didn't seem to help. And then I did some more research, and I replaced the throttle position sensor. And that didn't help. And I tried some other things. And I heard, well, it could be like maybe a vacuum leak. I looked for some brittle vacuum lines or cracked lines, and I couldn't see anything or figure anything out that way. And it's still doing it now. I'm just really frustrated trying to figure out what it is. And I was thinking, if it was a vacuum leak, wouldn't it be more of a constant issue? So the issue is sometimes it works fine, it idles normal. Sometimes it idles really high. And so I was wondering if it could be like some other computer sensor that was faulty, or what could be causing this issue, because it's really kind of driving me crazy trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it could be a sensor causing it to do that. When the coolant temp sensor reads lower than it should, it could increase the idle speed. A vacuum leak will definitely do it, but it's going to be constant, like you said. It's not going to be part-time. Yeah. It's going to be a full-time leak going on there. With vacuum brakes, if you have a vacuum brake booster that is leaking into the cab, that can cause a high idle, and we've replaced a couple of those over the years for that in that body style F-150. Sometimes you can hear it leaking into the cab. It'll be hissing inside and leaking, and it won't do it all the time, because as your cab warms up inside, whether it's a hot summer day or you're turning the heater on and it can change that airflow. So for us in the shop, as we're diagnosing them, we're using a pair of hose pinch pliers that won't cut into the hose, and we just squeeze the hoses shut. There's very few vacuum lines on that truck, but that would be one of them, and we would close that off and see if it changes it. If it does, then we know there's a major leak there, and we'd have to replace it.
Interesting that you would do it that. What's the thing that I remember Jake showing me one time that's on those Fords? There's a valve that has a vacuum line going that starts with a P or something like that would affect idle. I just remember him talking about that. It was
The PCV can cause
No,
issues
it wasn't.
with that.
It wasn't that. It was something else. I could be conflating different information.
Some of them have valves in the 4-wheel drive for vacuum, where they've got electric as well. But it depends on the car you're in. But now they do have Hondas have a bypass valve on some of the older cars like the Civics and the Accords, and those would cause an issue with the high idle when they had an internal vacuum leak. Basically, you couldn't hear it outside, but it would run a bypass. It had a thermal bypass valve, and it would do that. So on this F-150, another thing I'd do would be to clean the throttle body with some sensor-safe throttle body cleaner, like some from our partner at PB Blaster. Clean that out. I
did that too, and that didn't seem to help anything.
Once you do that, make sure you disconnect the throttle body or disconnect the power to the vehicle for about 10 minutes and hook it back up.
And let it relearn?
Right.
Could that alone help him?
Yes. Because if you've got any carbon buildup in there and you clean it, it won't fix it until you reset the system. And it'll go into a system reset for that throttle body if you shut it off and then restart it again.
So just give him the Cliff's Notes version again, what he should do after he cleans it.
Clean it, then disconnect the battery cable on this particular truck for about 10 minutes.
This particular truck, I want to reinforce that.
Not all cars we want to disconnect the battery on. Then hook it back up and run it. See if that does any good, because like you said, you change that the idle air control valve out, and it worked for a while, right?
Right.
And you change that idle out, and it worked for a while. It came back, so it may have reset itself. That may have just been in the system reset. So clean that throttle body out and go from there.
Okay.
All right. Well, good luck.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Take care. All right. We're going to take a quick break, just a very short one here, and we will be right back with more Under the Hood.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back to Under the Hood from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. I am Russ Evans. Of course, you know that if you listen to the show. Along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Hello.
It is hoodie time. Hoodie time. So if you have joined the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com and you have gone to our YouTube channel and subscribed there, you may be an instant winner.
Is it and or is it or?
I want you to join the Hoodie Fan Club, because if you have just subscribed to our YouTube channel, and
we don't have any idea what size you are.
Who you are. I know, I see you're on the channel. You may not even have a name, because a lot of YouTube people have an alias name. The green car guy. Hey, the green car guy, you've won a hoodie. No,
that doesn't work.
Too bad. No. So I need to I need to know who you are. And typically those guys, a lot of people interact there, so we know who they are a lot of times.
So what do we got for a winner today, Russ?
Bill White from Laredo, Texas. Congratulations from all of us here under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. If you thought about a career in automotive, now is the time to really get behind that program. Automotive technicians are in high demand. It's a good career with good pay. It'll be something you can be proud of. And there's a lot of technology coming into play now, and it really is a career. And
you could be fixing a kitchen sink in a Rivian.
There you go. But you could work pretty much anywhere you want in the country, and for about any amount of pay, depending on how you want to apply yourself. Now, there's still a lot of mechanics that don't want to apply themselves. They're not going to get very far. But the ones that do want to apply themselves, they're going to do well. They're going to be able to work for a good, strong company and make good money. And the only way you're going to really become a good tech is if you get trained in the first place. And Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu, they're going to take care of you in that aspect. And once you do get trained, there are places out there looking to hire right now, of course. And our friends over at CarMax. CarMax is hiring experienced auto technicians for many of its 200-plus stores nationwide. And if you're looking for a job where you can make a great living while working on the cars you love, CarMax is the place for you. Join CarMax and grow your technical expertise and work with state-of-the-art tools and technology. Work on the cars you love. Join CarMax. Apply today at CarMaxAutotech.com. All right, let's jump over here to the phones, and we are going to talk to Brian, who has a 2007 Impala. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. Okay, and
Tell us
I had
about
this
your
Impala.
Impala.
I drove it like 10 miles, parked it for an hour, and I go to start it, and it's just sputtering. It doesn't want to run, and I had to get into town, but I got it into drive, and if I kept the throttle on, it would run, and it wouldn't go that fast, but it read out low engine power. So I limped it home, and then the next day I started it, and it ran fine. So I took it into the dealership, and they told me they could do one of two things: either clean out the system or replace the throttle body. And I said, well, I don't want to mess around with it, so I just had them put a new throttle body on. And then it ran fine for 2 days, and it did the same thing. So I took it back, and they said they had to do a relearn procedure because it was out of spec. So I got it back then. It ran fine for a couple days. And yesterday I was going to work. I got it out of the driveway, drove a couple blocks, and it was just, there was no throttle response at all. It was just idle. So I limped it back home in idle and parked it. Next day, when I got home, I started up and it ran fine again. So I'm wondering what I need to do to it.
Other than drive it off of a thing without you in it, because I'm sure it's maddening.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
The system consists of the throttle body, the throttle pedal, and the engine computer. And when we work on these and have issues in this, the number one fix we have for them is usually the throttle body.
That's what, when he first asked, I was going to go right there, and then he said he already put one on. I was like, oh.
Yep, that's number one. And along with that, the system needs to be reset, clear the codes, relearn it, which is something, they should do.
Well, it sounds like they did that when he brought it back in the second time, possibly.
I think they probably did it the first time too. And then when they put it, later, they thought, well, let's hope that fixes it. And it doesn't always. Sometimes it does. So we would try the same thing and see what happens. And we'd say, if it still doesn't come back, we're going to have to take a look at this. Of course, we would drive it plenty to make sure that it was working at the time we let it go. Because if you just throw a throttle body on and park it up front for the customer to pick it up, how do you know if you haven't at least put 10 miles on it to see what's going on? And then if it does, sometimes it frustrates us as a shop. So we'll go test drive it, and there's a problem. We go, oh, great. And we bring it back and try to fix something. Take it for a drive, and it does it again. We're like, oh, great. And it's still in the shop, but at least it's still in the shop. So if we're telling the customer, no, it's not ready yet, we're still working on it. Well, yeah, you're frustrated because you don't have your car, but at least it's in the shop, and they're the ones. So you're not bringing it back over and over and over.
Or trying to limp it home because you're trying to get to work and it's not working.
Sitting in traffic, that's no fun either. At least if you're borrowing a car or getting a ride or a Lyft or Uber or something, you're going to get there. You've got a plan. But so the second step, when that doesn't work, we're going to be looking really closely at the codes and the data to see if there's anything going in the throttle pedal. Usually when we get an issue with the throttle pedal, it's going to give us a code for the throttle pedal.
It has its own
accelerator
code.
Pedal position, APP, and that's very common when that happens. But if you don't get codes for anything and it's still doing it, put a new throttle body on there. It's possible the engine computer has got a failure. We have put, I would say, probably half of the cars that we put a throttle body on, we end up putting a throttle pedal on, or throttle, back up. Half of the cars that we put a throttle body on, we also end up putting a engine computer in and programming it because they have a failure in there. And a lot of the times that's brought on by a failure in the throttle body. Throttle body takes a lot of amperage to run. You got a big blade in there. It has to open and close, and it takes a lot of power to move that thing.
Very powerful. Don't ever stick your fingers in there.
No, if you stick your fingers in there or play with it, you push it to open it and see how much carbon's in there. Make sure the key is out of the ignition and in your pocket or somewhere, because if it's on and you stick your finger in there, it may say, hey, it's open. Let's close to prevent the car from accelerating on its own, and it can pull the tip of a finger right off. They're super strong. I got a screwdriver jammed in one time, just open it to see what was going on in there. And it closed on my screwdriver, and I could not pull it out until I unplugged it. So it tells you how strong it is on a smooth screwdriver. So, yeah, it could be the engine computer. One thing you might try, which is a great diagnosis if it works, but a lot of times it won't, is just take like a screwdriver or the handle of a hammer and just lightly tap on that engine computer under the hood, tap, tap, tap. And if it fixes it, that's your problem. Because the circuit boards have a failure inside. They go bad, and they're not fixable because they're encapsulated in epoxy, not easy to get to and work on. So,
well, and the good thing on that is you can use a recycled original equipment computer in that car pretty easily.
Oh, yeah, and program it.
And program it, just like you'd have to program a new one. And so depending on where you're at, you can go to car-part.com, and you could find an engine computer for not a lot of money for that car and have someone program it and put it in. And sometimes you got to do a test part, and that's a cheap way to do a test part. Many places are going to be non-returnable on electrical, but if you're only spending $50, $60, $75, maybe that's cheaper than the cost of diagnosis when the problem is not occurring all the time. Because if I bring my vehicle into Russ, and you hear us say this a lot. I hate, sometimes I feel like I'm saying stuff all the time, but if it's not having the problem when I bring it to him.
You're saying it all the time.
I do say
it's
it all
true.
the time.
It's true.
But he is going to be struggling, and I'm going to say, no, I want you to figure it out. Well, I'm going to have to drive your car, or I'm going to have to do this, and I got to charge you if I'm spending time on your car. Because if I'm spending time on your car trying to make it fail.
And we feel bad if we don't think we can fix it. We would feel bad for taking the money to just.
So there are times, though, I know, well, Russ will tell him the same thing. Hey, it's not failing. We see nothing wrong. One of the more common problems is the engine computer. If you would like, we can buy an engine computer, program it, and put it in, and we'll see if it fixes the problem. And you have to present it that way, that we are using a hypothesis, but this is not a guaranteed repair on this. This is something we want to try, and we need your approval to try it. That's different than saying, hey, we're going to put an engine computer in it. That should fix the problem. I think you have to present that differently, don't you, Russ, when you go down that road when the problem's not occurring?
Oh, definitely. And most of the time, depending on what's going on, if it's very rare that our shop has nothing to do, but occasionally one person will have not much to do, and the other guys are all busy. The other three are working away doing something, and I might say, you know what, I'll take a 10-minute look at it and just see what's going on for nothing. I'll just drive it. I'll just see what's going on, scan it real quick, see if I can find something. But more often than not, I just tell them, oh, it's not doing it today. I'm not even going to look at it. Just don't. No. It's like, well, it does it once a week, but that's not today. And there's no light on. There's never been a light on. We can't help you out.
So if you can figure out how to replicate it, if there's certain conditions, certain timing when you start the car, certain temperatures, just really we do encourage people to keep track of a journal, keep track of notes, just a simple scratch pad in your vehicle that would say, all right, it was this time, it was this temperature, that sort of a thing. But we're talking all over your question here now.
Something I just thought of when you said how much power it takes. One day last week, I went to start my car, and it just clicked like the battery was dead. I turned the ignition off and turned it on, and it just started right up. So makes me wonder, maybe it's something small as battery connection might be loose, or
if you have a problem in your battery connection where it's not always making a good connection, but sometimes it'll start, so you turn the key on and then it makes connection, little spark in there, it makes a temporary connection so you can get the car started and drive it. If it's not always making a good constant connection, that can confuse the computer and cause some issues. So yes, it could be something there. when I went through both BMW school and Ford Lincoln Mercury school and some of the General Motors training, guess what the first thing we did was? The very first thing was batteries. It was just checking batteries. And the first thing they did was say, check the vehicle battery with a tester, clean and secure the battery cables before you do any other electronic diagnosis on the car. Because it was all about electronics, all three companies, and this was going back a number of years ago. But they wanted everything to be solid, because if there was anything acting up at all, it could cause a problem with that system and make it act up.
You know, Russ, I have that. If you listen to the show regularly, you know that I'm a glutton for punishment, and I have a 06 Range Rover that I fixed up that was with electrical problems, and it had water gotten into the tunnels where all the electrical wires run, and had it all tore apart and fixed wires, and quite proud of myself that I got it all back together, and it runs and we use it all the time. But it developed all of a sudden a check engine light, and so I had my scanner on there, my OBD Link scanner, and I was checking it out, and I'm like, you know what? I got a check engine light for a lean code, and Russ and I talked about a little bit. I cleaned some things up, and every time I would reset the codes, the battery would go dead. But I was also, when it would come back to life, I was getting codes for suspension system low on one side, HDRC system not able to be obtained, parking aid light was flashing, and I knew that I was having a problem with that battery. So I went out and I got a new AGM battery from O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and I put that in there, and that AGM battery, getting everything solid on the electrical system, everything else went away. All those other problems I was having went away. I still have the lean code. We'll figure that out. But everything else went away. But I can clear that code, and it doesn't kill my battery now. The battery was just shot. It had some bad cells inside of it or whatever was going on. But now with that new battery in there, all those other problems went away because I've got the right voltage running through the system. And so that's always something to consider is low voltage, battery connections. Russ, you mentioned a number of times, maybe not so much on this car, but ignition switches to make sure that it's presenting the right power when the switch is on. Those are all keys to all these vehicles running properly.
Everything. It's really important to check those things out.
So, Brian, we've given you all kinds of information, all kinds of ideas. We've talked all over your question, but thanks for calling in, and I hope we can get that figured out for you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care. All right, we got a couple lines open. We're going to take a quick break. 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. Get on Under the Hood, and we'll help you with free automotive advice.
Get under the hood. Call the Motor Medics. 866-594-4150.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood show. 866-594-4150. Get on and we will answer your question absolutely free. Double your free money back if the advice isn't good enough for you.
The ultimate warranty.
Yeah, no kidding. So we were out at the fairgrounds, at the W.H. Lyons Fairgrounds in Sioux Falls, South Dakota on Tuesday night this past week for the 50th anniversary of the Black Hills Corvette Classic. So you've heard of Sturgis and the Black Hills of South Dakota. That's the motorcycle rally, but they also have the Corvette Classic, which is a big event. This year drew about 600 or so-ish cars.
Well, just here it did.
Just here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
heading out that way.
That's here because there's hundreds of people that come in from other places of the country that just don't have all the time, just like they do with Sturgis. So we
some people will pop into Sturgis for a couple days, but these people make the week of it. They're coming out and they're doing the event. They're parking for a show and shine at the fairgrounds for hot summer nights, and then they're heading out to spearfish the next day. 50th annual event.
Yeah, so we, the last couple years anyways, Shannon and I and Chris have all kind of banded together willingly to run the Quick 60 event. And Shannon will explain a little bit how that runs, but it's a race. It's a car race. You got to be quick. and it's 60 feet.
Well, you got a 100-foot box that they make on a straight course, and we line them up with a timing light at the very front. You got to be behind that timing laser, and you just sit there, and when you're ready and the course is clear, you accelerate either as fast as you think you can or as smooth as you think you can, whatever method you think you can, to get up, and you've got to start wowing the car down at 60 feet, and it has to be completely stopped within a 100-foot box. And if you break the 100-foot barrier, your time is you're out of there. It's null. You're done. And so these folks that have the Corvettes, it's a way they can compete without really tearing the cars up. I think one guy might have tore his car up a little bit, actually quite a bit, but with a clutch problem. But
well, I could smell it.
You could see it. Their power was going and the car wasn't moving. But they'll run that course, and this time it was sponsored by, my dad was really involved and sponsored by Nordstrom's Automotive, and we had some of our employees out there helping, and Under the Hood show, we were out there making sure things were moving right along, and they had times that ran anywhere from, I think the slowest one we had was like a 2.6 seconds, somewhere in there, and then the fastest time that ended up winning with a new C8 Corvette was 1.90. Mm-hmm. And what's was really impressive about that, we had full-blown race cars out there for exhibition.
1.84 was the fast on that.
And these are cars that have won the National Pro X, the Leasinger cars. They're sponsored by Lucas Oil and Summit. They got Warren Johnson racing engines in them and huge Wildwood brakes. I mean, these cars
no traction control, no ABS. This is all driver on those cars.
Yep, and those cars they're awesome cars, and they're street legal cars too. The way they got them set up.
Well, we even had Ken Lingenfelter out there.
Yep.
And
Rick Malone, who is the driving school director at Pahrump, Nevada for the Spring Mountain facility that they use as the official Corvette driving school that I've been to a couple of times, and Rick was there too, and he, even driving Lingenfelter's car or his own, didn't win.
No, and they were right.
Impressive. He was right there, but
just didn't quite hit it. So,
but that was fun to be out there. And Russ, you guys, I was busy. They handed me the announcing mic, and I'm still getting my voice back from that. And you guys were talking to people, and we had hoodies from all over come say hello.
We had a couple come up to us that listen to the show regularly. One of them was from Florida, came up with his wife, and so we gave him a couple T-shirts, and it was great. Had a lot of fun. It's always nice to have people come up to events like that we've never met before and just meet those fans. So let's meet one of our fans right now, Jim in Wisconsin. Jim, you're on Under the Hood. How you doing?
Okay, I'm doing all right.
How can we help you?
Yeah,
we got you.
95 Ram van.
Yeah, and it runs okay till it reaches operating temperature. Then the check engine light comes on, and it starts like stumbling every half a mile or every mile or two.
Now, is this a full-size Ram van? I'm trying to think of that body style, or is this a cargo Ram van, minivan?
No, it's a cargo maxi van.
Cargo maxi van.
25.
So it's got
25.
So it's got like a 360 engine, a 5.9 or a 5.2 or something in there?
Yeah, I'm old school, 360.
That's good. Well, some people, you say that and they're like, huh? But yeah, definitely for sure. So we had a call earlier today on the show with someone that had an 02 Ram pickup with a 360 in it. He had a tip-in throttle issue that would be stumbling sometimes on tip-in throttle, but low acceleration. And so in your case, you're running good when it starts. And when you say warmed up, could you qualify that a little bit, what warmed up means?
Well, it gets to the 170 temperature line, the temperature gauge. And sometimes a little later than that, but right around there, the check engine light comes on. And I took it to one of these parts places, and we asked him if he could plug it into his tester, and he says, your van is too old to plug into our tester.
Into their tester, yes. So they're using OBD2 testers, but there is a plug-in connection for that vehicle. We have one in our shop. Most shops are going to have those if the shops have been around. If they've been around that long, if they've been around since the 90s, because a lot of them they just started with OBD2.
OBD2 started in 95, 96, right there.
You could have a shop that opened in 2005 that may not have that, and yet that shop's been open for over a decade, easily now.
Well, I did talk to my dealer about doing it, but he wanted $60 to plug his device in, so I passed on that for right now.
Oh, of course. These dealerships, they're in the business of, it's kind of like a law firm. They buy the hour on everything. So for them to pull somebody off a car, if they've got, let's say they have just one tech, which they have more than that, but if they've got one tech, he's working on a car and it's an 8-hour job, he's putting an engine in. If they take him off of that for a short period of time, that money stops while they're checking something else out. So that's why those places do it. Good thing that auto parts stores have those available, like O'Reilly Auto Parts. But the problem is that it's an OBD2 scanner that these places are going to use, so they're not going to be able to plug in and find
just
out.
like you learned.
Yeah, and a lot of the codes that they would get on your van, being a 95, are really not going to be super helpful unless it has a hard fault code for a map sensor or a throttle position, something. So your stumble you have, what kind of stumble is it? Does it just fall on its face and shut off?
What he's getting at that was really unique to me, Russ, is he was saying that 170 degrees, check engine light comes on, give or take 170 degrees, and then it starts running rough. And will it do this all the time?
Almost all the time. I took it a couple miles once when it was warmed up, but then the check engine light come on and it stumbled again. And if there's, it's like all the cylinders miss, and then it runs again.
So
that's what it feels like.
It seems like when we get down a rabbit hole of a certain type of repair under the hood, it continues. And when I'm thinking of this, if it's coming on right at 170, boom, every time, it's got to be something temperature related, where when the computer sees it get to a certain spot, boom, it comes on. I would be reading the data with a scanner that can communicate of how hot the engine is actually versus what it thinks it is. So let's say that the engine thinks it's 240 degrees, but it's really not. It's going to start running very bad instantly when it gets to that number, that magic number that is programmed into it. And then as you drive down the road, you're getting some cooling effects, so the temperature is going to fluctuate up and down slightly. And it could be enough that I've seen coolant temperature sensors read way out of the box. They'll jump when the engine jumps 1 degree, they may jump 10 on that sensor because we've got a sensor that's failing, and that could be because of a failing ground in the sensor circuit or the actual sensor.
Okay. So it's not necessarily. Do those engines that vehicle have a engine controller?
Yes. It's got an engine controller under the hood, control module, and then the sensors on the engine. You'll have throttle position sensor, oxygen sensors, intake air temp sensor, and the engine coolant temp sensor itself. And the good thing is that if you find out which sensor it is, if it is a sensor, not a ground or a computer, they're pretty cheap. An air temp sensor on that car is probably $13 to $20.
Okay.
It'd be worth your time to I think, if the dealership has an experienced tech that has been around when these vehicles were.
Yeah, they got to be older guys, like in their 60s.
That have experience with the OBD1 stuff. The $60 becomes cheap at that point. Or else you need to find the technician in your area at an independent repair shop that has the tool and that experience. They can get their arms around this one pretty quick, and that $60 might be money well spent.
But don't let them put a guy on it that's 30 years old that has never worked on OBD1 that just plugs it in and reads the code and says, "Oops, sorry, Jim, we don't have anything. Can't do anything. Let me take your $60." No. We get people all the time saying, can you check this out? No, we don't have that equipment. We don't work on those. We do not work on that model Ferrari or Lamborghini. Sorry, I'm not even going to attempt it.
Has that happened?
No.
Okay.
Okay. The only other question I have is, does that also have a transmission controller, or is that all in one box?
That is all in one. Everything's all in one.
Yeah, and that transmission is not.
And that's manual.
Yeah, it doesn't have any electronics to it, I don't think, yet in that van that I'm aware of.
Oh, they still had throttle linkage.
Yep.
Well, I'm just unless you have the overdrive button. Do you have the overdrive button on the dash or the shifter?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, well then there is an electronic segment to that.
Electronic overdrive.
Yeah. So
all right. Well, thanks, Jim.
Okay. Well, thanks for your help.
You bet. Take care.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Under the Hood. You can join us in our next hour coming up here shortly. 866-594-4150. We'd love to get you on Under the Hood. Take care, everybody. We'll see you shortly.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
with Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is Under the Hood. I am Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
And the absent Chris Carter.
We do miss Chris when he's gone.
We do. Soon to return to a show
normally he
near
would be
you.
back behind the keyboard, the control panel, not the keyboard. You could pretend like it's a keyboard, but the control
Console.
panel, the console.
We call it a console.
Is that the right word?
Yeah, in the radio world, we call it a console.
Okay, he would be behind the console just
con.
making it look easy. Russ is making it look pretty easy too, but he's also trying to concentrate and answer car questions at the same time. So that makes the degree of difficulty just a little bit higher.
So when he left this morning, he said, "Russ, you have the con," and I said, "Aye, aye, Captain." we had it down. We're good to go.
The jokes I don't get involved with.
Yeah, that's all right. But producer Doug is in there
Somewhere.
I think.
Hope he
Doug,
wasn't
are you there?
raptured.
He left us.
I thought we would have went with.
He left us. He's gone. Wouldn't that be something if he was taken and we were left behind?
I think that would be a.
That would be an awkward
There had to
moment.
be a mistake.
Look out the window and down in Nordstrom's 2.0. Is there anybody left at the counter?
I don't know. I see the big praise of the Lord always, though, the PTLA. So
Well, that hasn't been taken. So we're
all right. We're good.
I think we're all safe.
What is
right now.
was you guys talk movies all the time, and they miss me with their movie jokes. If it has anything to do with Star Wars, Star Trek, just name it. They miss
Tony
me.
Stark.
They miss me on They miss me on a lot of things that just go right over my head because I just never got as interested. I was entertained, but not as interested.
That's all right.
So, did you like Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I loved Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller.
Yeah, okay. I just was curious if you liked that movie. You like the scene when he's trying to get the mileage rolled back on the Ferrari?
Yeah, when it's up on the jack stands, a very poor jack stand, and he's got it in reverse, and he's got a brick on the gas pedal to keep it floored in reverse, and it's been running for a while.
Yeah, this is the dad's car they were not supposed to take out. Collector car in the house, and they
in the glass garage,
and
glass man cave, over a cliff.
Yeah.
The back of it's a cliff house.
If you haven't seen the show, you'll imagine the rest, but Automotive News used a picture from that show to tell the story of two used car dealers that are now in prison. They not only rolled back odometers, but they rolled up prison time.
Oh, ouch.
And a New York judge last week ordered a used car dealer to serve a 5 years in prison and pay nearly $4 million in restitution for tampering with hundreds of vehicle odometers. His brother was sentenced to a year in prison. From 2006 to 2011, which means they were most likely obviously tampering with these electronic odometers.
Which is not real easy.
Shmuel Galai altered the mileage of an estimated...
Small guy?
I may have said that wrong, but it was not small guy. Of an estimated 690 used vehicles he had purchased, then sold them at wholesale auctions in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, according to court documents. On average, odometers were rolled back by more than 69,000 miles. Gali and his brother bought the vehicles in Florida, Maryland, and Missouri using fake dealer names. Pennsylvania issued vehicle titles reflecting the altered mileage figures, which the Galleys gave to the buyers at the auction. The falsified lower mileage numbers led to more profitable sales.
Well, of course.
NHTSA's Odometer Fraud Investigation Division and the IRS investigated the matter, and I guarantee you the way that this started being discovered was vehicle history reports. We talk about this a lot on the show.
Wait a second. That oil change was done at 48,000 miles. Why does the car only have 20 on it now?
So we've talked to our hoodies for years. We had one of our sponsors for quite a while was Auto Data Direct.
Mm-hmm.
Good friends of ours, great people. You've obviously heard the brand name Carfax.
Yep.
If you go into dealerships, they have programs called Auto Checks and others. They're all digging into databases of information. And one of those is a national motor vehicle titling information system.
Invitas.
Yes, and that system is kind of the core that you can look at to find out what the odometer history is. Now, you add in a la carte, if you get to a company like Carfax and others, they may have business relationships like Carfax does with the Snap-on Corporation, who owns the Mitchell systems.
Right.
Am I right on that, Russ?
Yeah, so when we're in our shop and you come in for an oil change or an engine repair or a door lock knob and we put your mileage in, guess what? It's automatically reported to a lot of those.
And it's not like Russ says, okay, I got to turn in my Carfax report now. No, this is a contractually obligated thing that is hardwired into the system. So if we want to use this good system that Mitchell offers to run our facility at the service center that Russ manages, can you opt out of that? I don't think you can.
No,
can you?
You can't. It's part of the system.
And so you agree that I want to use your system, but I also understand that this data for vehicle repairs by VIN number, not by person's name, not by private information where they live, but the vehicle and the vehicle's VIN number and the work that was performed as it was described on the service ticket is funneled to Carfax to be available for vehicle history reports. But all these things create a mileage chain.
Yep, and I believe that every system that is professional for people to use in a shop does this now. I don't know of any that do not. And I
you think all Data's got their relationships too?
I know All Data does. Mitchell has it. Most of the dealerships have it. Some of the dealerships are using the Mitchell system, but some of them have their own, and it's all being reported as far as I know.
They've got some bigger players that do the dealership systems. I mean, it used to be Reynolds and others.
Hollander.
ADP.
Hollander was a big one.
Yeah, not Hollander piece of it, but the ADP part of it was.
The green screen of death that we...
But there's these big players that were in the dealership systems too, and they're all getting tied together, and they've been bought and sold, and I don't even know who calls who what anymore. But vehicle history report, you can buy the most affordable one, or when you're at a repair shop, for a used vehicle inspection, which we also have promoted for years and years. If you're going to buy nowadays you start seeing, I'm going to digress just a little bit and I'll come back. Met a sheriff friend of mine yesterday and we were just chatting. Had to be down at the courthouse for a reason. And we were chatting a little bit before I went in. And he had told me how he had watched a recent estate sale because there was a 99 Silverado pickup on that estate sale. He knew the family. And he knew that truck had 27,000 actual miles of super nice. But now just remember, we're talking about a 99 Silverado pickup.
It's not that gold one, is it? I saw one pop up a couple days ago that was coming up on an estate sale.
I don't know what color it was. But anyway, If it's
I was
gold,
shocked. Yeah, it was gold, and it had 20-some thousand.
Okay, no, if it's gold, this even makes this story even more incredible because I wouldn't pay this much for a gold pickup. That color was not really good in that era because it had a tan interior, and they were not real pretty, I didn't think. If you got one, I'm sorry. But this truck went up for auction, and it brought, in today's market, somebody paid and somebody else bid right behind him. You got to remember that. Say, oh, look what he paid. Well, somebody else was bidding $22,000.
That's ridiculous. But
that's a lot of money.
I can see it. It's happening, but it's still, I feel it's ridiculous because I wouldn't pay that.
Right. So anyway, this truck it's still a 99 Silverado that you're paying $22,000 for. You get a vehicle that you're going to look at, and you're going to spend $15,000 on an older truck because the prices are so high right now. I'm just throwing a number out. You want to get a used vehicle inspection. Just because someone has this vehicle to sell doesn't mean that vehicle is worth that kind of money. That vehicle could have past history in its vehicle history. It could have past repairs that weren't done properly. So you want to get the used vehicle inspection done. Most people will agree to that. If you're going to spend $15,000, hey, let me take it for an afternoon. I got an appointment. They're going to spend 2 hours or an hour looking at it, do some general checkovers. But while you're there, they can usually give you a cursory vehicle history report, at least a mileage and repair report, for free. I mean, Russ, you can look up somebody's, if they're there having work done, and you can tell them while they're there as part of that used vehicle inspection.
Oh, we always do. We pull up, we're part of the Carfax shop program, which is mechanical, not collision repair. They're completely separate when you look them up that way. So we're looking at something different than what you're going to find on your Carfax vehicle history report typically, unless you go for extended ones like that, which is extra cost. And when we look it up, we can see a lot of things like, so you buy a car. We do an inspection. We don't know if you've had a timing belt put on and your car happens to have one. Well, we look it up and it says, oh, look, the timing belt was replaced 40,000 miles ago. So we know it was 2 years ago, 40,000 miles ago. Or we look and we see no history of it. Well, that's a better time to spend the money and do a timing belt replacement than if you were to say, no, let's just throw one in, and then you take it apart and you go, oh, you know what? This belt looks brand new, and there's a date code on it that happens to be 6 months ago, and you're like, ooh. Foul.
And we used to talk about that years ago. I mean, we've been doing the show for 30 years, but I remember having those discussions with people on the air. You really should put a timing belt in there if you don't know. If you don't know if it's been done and you've got this particular year of Honda, you really need to put a timing belt in there.
That's important to know.
So now with these systems, if the work is getting done at professional repair facilities, the highest majority are using electronic systems that are reporting to these vehicle history agencies. I think in the end, this is a good thing for consumers. It is definitely a good thing for consumers. I know in our state, we were early adapters to title history requirements on the titles. Eventually that went away because the private systems that are available through Carfax and others give way more information than a mark on a title ever could. And I think that time is coming. I think it's good for consumers.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back on the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting UnderTheHoodShow.com.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. So, Shannon.
Yes.
In follow-up to the odometer tampering question. So we had a question come to us through our YouTube channel, and the question is, it's illegal, guys, it's illegal to tamper with the odometer. But what about people that put different size tires on their big trucks and don't change the computer to alter the speedometer so it works correctly? This also affects mileage, and how does that matter? Because if you're changing to big tires and you go from, let's say, a 245 75 16 to a 35 or 38-inch tire, over a couple years, that can make a 10,000-mile difference or more on a vehicle.
Well, I got a couple thoughts right away on that question. Number one, if it's a vehicle that is fairly modern you're probably not going to be able to do it because the vehicle's not going to work right unless you recalibrate the computer. The shift points in the transmission are going to be off.
Horribly off.
And the engine computer is not going to calibrate correctly. You're going to have a bad performing vehicle if you do that. As a matter of fact, some of these newer vehicles with all the different steering and suspension sensors that they have, they don't recommend it unless you're able to do a complete recalibration of your steering angle sensors and everything else because you're changing all that geometry. Now, I know a lot of people are foregoing that, but I know when Chevrolet came out with the Trail Boss option on the 2019-20 Silverado style, they also sold the ability to get a Trail Boss accessory kit, but they said to buy all the pieces and put them on your Silverado, you still had to bring it into the dealer so they can reprogram your engine computer to be able to take up for the new steering angles and different things that the geometry change created from their engineering specs. That's getting very technical, but that's what they would do. So I really don't think it's going to be that much of a problem because most people aren't going to be able to run the vehicle that way. One thing also that it did happen if it was an older vehicle, just recently they've stretched out now where the odometer reporting requirements, we get information from our dealer inspector here in South Dakota, Ron Reserve, but part of their dealer training and the changes for this year because of the federal code change, you have to report that odometer activity as actual, not actual, and then you, of course, have your over 100,000 miles on the old style odometers.
Unknown.
Up to 20 years now. It used to always be 10 years, but now it's 20 years it needs to be reported. And I think that's a great plan because the average used car out there, we always talk about it, is right in that 11.5-year range. And I'm sure that's going to stretch out now with the lack of production we've had for a lot of 2021 in 2020 and 2021 with COVID and then the chip shortages and everything. They estimate there's 4 million vehicles worldwide that are not produced because of different reasons. The demand and supply chains are just all messed up. So that 20-year mark is a good change, but it created new reporting requirements for everybody. So, but to answer the question in just, like you said, the rawest terms, if you had those bigger tires on there and that thing is rolling out a longer roll pattern, it is going to affect that odometer. And it doesn't have to, kind of like your 10-speed bike, it doesn't have to turn the axle quite as far to go as far. And
so the short answer to that is yes, it should be getting reprogrammed because if it's not, you are indirectly, you're an accessory to odometer tampering.
You'd almost, if you didn't change it and you knew that, you'd almost have to mark your odometer not actual.
Well, you would. Legally, if somebody said, is this the actual mileage? You would have to, under oath, you'd have to say, no, it's not actual because I've been driving for 2 weeks with the wrong size tire. So that would be the case, but I know a lot of people are not doing that.
I know one of the things we do at our automotive recycling facility, when we sell a recycled original equipment odometer, and it's the whole speedometer cluster, we include a sticker with it that it allows the customer to put it on their door jamb to say that at 105,000 miles, I replaced my speedometer with one that read 75,000 miles. And so when you go to report your title, it's going to be not actual, but at least the actual trail of the miles is showing if you do the math on the vehicle. Mm-hmm. You weren't trying to hoodwink somebody. You were presenting what happened. And that's what, if you put a new odometer in, you're supposed to be putting a sticker on that says a new odometer was replaced at 105,000 miles that had 0 miles on it. And like our friends at Dorman, when they do their remanufactured instrument clusters that are real common for like the Silverado pickups and a lot of the 05, 06, 07 Impalas and Monte Carlos, you send in your mileage and they are bonded and they have all the information so they can put it back to what your mileage was and get it back to you with your core and be able to get that mileage in a continuous trail from where it was at. And so, good question.
866-594-4150. This is Under the Hood. Shannon and I saw some news this morning that had me a little concerned.
What was that?
Well, the Firebird disappeared. The Trans Am, we were all sad. Pontiac went away, so it's gone. They talked about, hey, let's bring it back as, the General Motors Trans Am, or just call it a Trans Am. You don't even have to put on, because we always called it a Trans Am or a Firebird. We didn't call it a Chevy or a Pontiac, even though it was a Pontiac, and from General Motors, who makes Chevrolet and Buick and all that stuff. But they could have just come back like they did with the Viper. The Dodge Viper just became a Viper and things like they've talked about. Even with Corvette at point, they said, well, do we keep the Corvette? And that's a pretty stable name out there, and a lot of people screamed about that. The Camaro numbers are dropping extremely fast. They're dropping so hard that it will be a surprise to me if after this year General Motors continues that model into 2022. Because their numbers, of course, they dropped with COVID like a lot of numbers did. But they have cars to sell. If you want to buy a new Camaro, go buy a new Camaro. They're available. Most dealers have them. But the numbers are not reflecting that. Their numbers are very low. They're in the 2000s, where the Dodge Challenger is in like the 15,000s, I think. And the Mustang is up in the 7,000 or 8,000 range in the last quarter. So we're talking about a major drop. So they're about half of what they were the previous quarter, and that's significant. And I talked to a lot of people. I'm driving a Camaro, a Gen 5 Camaro, and I've got a lot of people that are saying they don't like the new Camaro, the latest one. What you see in 2020, 2021, they said that one really kind of dropped off and disappointed them. Performance-wise, it's good, but they said the body styling, that they lengthened it out, they moved the gas door, they just changed a lot of stuff, and people said, it's not kind of what we were thinking. And look at the Challenger is the Challenger.
It's basically stayed real much the same.
It came out, and it's a great-looking car, and, in my opinion, I think
has that been 2007 or 8 already or something like that?
A long time.
9?
So, and it's a great car. They keep adding features and interior, little small, subtle interior changes, but I like it. It's
well, they
good.
just keep dropping the horsepower in there, so that's what's got to raise attention.
Exactly. And I think the Camaro, my opinion, if I was going to be a GM designer right now, I would be going back and I would be doing a retro and make that thing look as strong as like a 67 or 68.
Well, they started with that, and they've had a hit on their hands, and it's interesting to hear those numbers have dropped. I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, they're dropping like a rock. So
maybe you could have a Trans Am option from the factory.
That would be great. I would like a Trans Am auction Camaro, because they've got them out there. They're out there. So. All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back on Under the Hood, 866-594-4150. We got a couple lines open for you.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
Welcome back to Under the Hood from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. 866-594-4150. I am Russ Evans, along with Shannon Nordstrom, filling in for Chris Carter. We're both filling in for Chris Carter, because it takes two of us to fill in for Chris, because his shoes are giant. They're like those giant clown shoes that you see those guys wear. The
Ronald McDonald House comes to mind.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's like right up there on top of stuff. So, join our Facebook group if you haven't. Sometimes I wonder, are you getting your questions answered there? Well, sometimes you want it right from the horse's mouth, so you're going to get it from us. But we had a question on our Under the Hood Show group. Gerald's got a 2000 Ford Ranger, and he put a starter on it and the battery cables. And now he has a crank no start issue, and the theft light is blinking rapidly.
What year was that?
A 2000 Ford Ranger. So
you wouldn't think of that as being
just right in the beginning of that era of the theft in those cars, trucks.
Yeah, they had the key with the little bit larger head on it, and then there was like a shielded guard on the ignition switch when you started getting into that era. And so did he get unlucky in that case that it went into that mode by replacing the battery? Because normally I didn't think you would in a 2000 Ranger.
I think So one of two things happened. Either when he disconnected this, let's say he disconnected it, took the cables off, replaced them the proper way, meaning that everything got connected exactly 100%, put it together with a new starter, and it did not work. He just had bad luck, and the computer lost its theft programming somehow, which it should not do. And when that happened, it's going to need reprogramming with a Ford programmer. But the other possibility, which is almost more likely, is that there's a wire on the ground side missing. Because remember the small wire that goes to the body on those, Shannon?
Yep.
If that wire is not there or didn't come with it, let's say it didn't come with a new cable. Because if you've got a wire sticking out, you're more likely to go, where does this go?
I got to hook this to something.
Than if there was no wire to begin with. And I just worked on a Ford truck myself yesterday where I replaced the battery cables for a customer that had already tried to do it themselves and had a red for a negative and a black for a positive, and it was crazy, but I got that nightmare straightened out. The new cable for the ground side, of course it was positive, didn't have the body ground. I got it all hooked up, and I said, I need to hook that up. And sure enough, even opening the door, when the dome light came on, the dash light started to glow before I had that hooked up. I'm like, this is not right. So I got that hooked up, and that worked. So we were good there. But that might be something you want to check out on that, is that. And don't forget, you can get a free hoodie every episode of Under the Hood. And this episode's winner is Mary Brown, who listens to us on Super Talk from the Mississippi Delta. Congratulations from our friends over at Under the Hood Show and Universal Technical Institute. A great partnership there for some great friends, and they are trying to get people trained to get out there in the automotive world. We've got a shortage of technicians, and Universal Technical Institute wants to fill that gap. They have got great teachers, great partnerships right alongside with the manufacturers.
Great locations too.
All over the country. They've got a beautiful one in Orlando that that's one I wouldn't mind teaching at myself.
And we talk about it too. You can be any age and change a career, and you're a very welcome student at UTI.
Yes, and there's careers that are all the way from the heavy wrencher people all the way up to the heavy electronic diagnosis people. So you may never get your hands dirty. Your hands may be on a scanner, on a laptop, and that's it. So you're like a computer IT guy doing this stuff. It's
we just had a gentleman stop in. They were on their way to the 50th annual Black Hills Corvette Classic, and they were from Wahoo, Nebraska.
Wahoo!
And down by Lincoln and Omaha, but his name was, I believe, Paul, and he had went to school to become a technician, and he wanted to do mainly the electrical pieces, and he didn't mind some of the auto body stuff. He didn't want to get into the heavier wrenching at all.
Oh, auto body.
But he did that for 16 years, and then he went, and now he's an Edward Jones financial advisor. And so he's changed careers a couple of different times, had success in both, and so now his automotive stuff is being done with his dad in a toy shop that they've put together. And his dad was a realtor that retired, and he's older, and together they can tinker on stuff, and he can use those skills. So I guess my point is the skills that you learn are skills you'll use for life, and things that you can use for your career and for hobbying, and do some pretty cool stuff hobbying that most people can't because of the understanding that you'll have.
Oh, yeah. I could see myself as like a financial advisor after I was, in an automotive career. But right now I'm still liking the automotive career. It's fun, and it's growing strong, and so is the show. So our friends over at CarMax are hiring experienced auto technicians for many of their 200-plus stores nationwide. And if you're looking for a job where you can make a great living while working on the cars you love, CarMax is the place for you. Join CarMax and grow your technical expertise and work with state-of-the-art tools and technology. Work on the cars you love. Join CarMax. Apply today at CarMaxAutotech.com. And 866-594-4150, 866-594-4150. We're going to go over to Rod in Minnesota. We're going to go to Rod first there, Doug. Sounds good. Or would you want to go to Daniel first? Daniel was up first, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Sorry, Rod. We're going we're gonna jump in there, but that's all right. We're gonna be with you just a second there, Rod. Hey, Daniel, welcome to Under the Hood.
Hi guys, how's it going?
It's going great. It's a great day. I'd say we're doing better than whatever, but that's somebody else's
We're missing
trademark.
our fearless council board operator, Chris, and he adds so much to the show. We're missing him today, but Russ and I have done this before, and we just keep on cranking.
Hey, usually I'm just answering questions, but today I'm pushing buttons, and I'm pushing my own buttons because I put them in. So I guess.
How can we help you?
So I've got a 93 Ford Ranger with a 3-liter V6, a 5-speed manual. I'm having an issue where it's having a really bad wandering idle, where sometimes it'll just be idling perfectly fine when it's all warmed up, and then all of a sudden it'll drop down to, say, almost 500 RPM, try to sound like it's going to die, and then come back up to 900 RPM and then drop back down to a normal idle. And then the other issue, which I have a feeling is kind of related to this one, is if I'm trying to go up a hill, this truck just feels like it has no power. And it'll start sounding like it's missing, and I'll hear popping out of the exhaust. And it's just we're having a really rough time going uphill. I've checked all of the plugs. They're all looking good. I checked the spacing on. Some of them had a little bad spacing, so I did the correct spacing on them, and I got it running better. The catalytic converter's been replaced, and that got it even working a little bit better on top of that. But I'm still having issues. I don't know if there's something I should be looking for, a vacuum leak, injector issue. Just trying to see where to go next to maybe get this thing to get a bit more power and be able to make it up a hill.
It doesn't sound healthy, and that's that 93 Ranger with a 3-liter. That's basically the same engine they had in the Taurus, and they made hundreds of thousands and millions of those cars.
Lots and lots.
And so we've seen lots of these vehicles. Now I do want to ask you, when you had the spark plugs out, you said they look clean, good. You didn't see any weird crystallization, any weird colorization on them?
Nope, they looked perfectly fine.
And the vehicle's not losing any coolant?
No.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to get that out of the way because we do.
Yeah, that was one of my issues, and we were concerned about that, if that could have been an issue or something, and I did have a compression test. All of the cylinders came back fine. One was slightly lower than the others by about, I think, 3 pounds or so, but that was about it.
Who cares? So if your plugs are clean and you're not losing coolant, because what I was worried about for other hoodies that are listening is whether or not he was having a coolant leak into the cylinders and it was disrupting the firing in those cylinders, because it wouldn't be uncommon on one of those in a Ranger for some reason. We didn't have that problem as much in a Taurus, but we did in a Rangers. That was a coolant flow issue or whatever it was, but we'd see that a fair amount. But now we're getting back to some general drivability issues, if we can rule out a lot of that. So what else have you done? You've done catalytic converter. You've spent some money. This 93 Ranger's cost you some bucks.
Yeah, a little bit, especially because it's out here in California, so that catalytic converter really costs money.
Yeah, that's for sure. On states that need it, they tend to charge a little more than states that don't. It's like, well, if you don't really need it, we've got to discount them. But if you have to have it, let's raise them up.
And Russ and I always get concerned when we hear people have replaced catalytic converters. We want to make sure they've replaced them because they needed them. Because we do hear way too many stories where somebody will get a reduced catalyst warning light, and
it's something else.
And
like
so they go ahead and they put a catalytic converter on it as a fix, and they didn't fix the problem. They just bought a part. So Russ, if you want to,
this one was actually plugged up. It was not working correctly at all and anything, and that's where my concern is.
Why?
What plugged it?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, what plugged it, and did it damage anything else, such as an oxygen sensor from the extra heat? So that could be something going on. You're going to have to look at the data on that thing as it's running and kind of see what's going on. And the data on these old OBD1 trucks and cars are really hard to look at because you can't just plug into them and read it like you can on OBD2. So you have to put a voltmeter onto each sensor individually and watch the voltmeter to see where your voltage is going from 0 to 1 volt, and see if it's rich, if it's crossing over half a volt, over 500 millivolts, or if it's lean, if it's running lower, and watch that. Vacuum leaks are huge on these things. The idle air control motor, that can be a problem on this. Even the PCV valve can be a problem on these engines. And sometimes we'll use our pinch pliers for vacuum hoses. We'll pinch off the PCV valve line and see if it smooths out. If it does, we know we've got an issue going on there. But we also want to check it mechanically make sure there's not a lot of back pressure. But if you had a catalytic converter plug up and you're not burning oil and you don't know why,
and you're not losing coolant,
or you're only adding coolant like once a year, once every 6 months, and you're not adding very much to it. These trucks, we had plenty of them with slightly cracked heads, and I don't mean big gaping holes that were causing lots of coolant to disappear and a drivability issue so much as when you first start it cold, they might run a little rough. And that is a perfect place for our partner at K-Seal, because that's going to prevent the future leaks and stop anything even super minor right now. Cadillac Northstar engines were famous for having issues with them, so the factory said put these tablets in brand new, and every time you change the coolant. Well, just think of that as they were thinking ahead before K-Seal was even invented. Otherwise, they probably would have put that in there to fix the problem. But I wouldn't play around with a Ranger engine that would have a possibility of that, especially with a new converter. $20 it could save you a converter again. But the other things that can take out converters, besides coolant getting in there and engine oil getting in there if it's burning oil, the engine running improperly, way too rich, way too lean, that can overheat that catalyst and cause it to be damaged. So
all it takes is a couple of good flare-ups of lean code or rich code where that temperature soars inside that catalytic converter, and you can melt down the contents inside there.
Yep. So that's something to be on the alert for. But I would start by just double check that vacuum stuff, and then get yourself a good old fashioned voltmeter that will read very low voltage scale, 1 volt or less, and set it on the millivolts so you can read 1 to 1,000, which would be your 1 volt, and see where it's at. And if it looks like when it's running bad, it's running down around 100 or 200 constantly, that means it's running lean and we got a fuel issue. And if it's running way over 5, like 8 or 9, or pegged at 1 all the time, then it's running rich. And at least you can kind of get an idea: are we running too lean, or are we running too rich? That help you out a little bit?
Okay. Yes, it does. Now I have somewhere to go next.
All right.
Well, all right. Thanks for being a hoodie out there in California. We appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
All right.
866-594-4150. We're going to Rod in Minnesota, who has a 2016 Cadillac SRX. Hey, Rod, how you doing?
Hi, good. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's a friend of mine's car, and the touch screen on the radio is getting kind of crazed. Get a little, I don't know, something. I've been reading online and stuff. A lot of people have a problem. The screen is getting kind of like you can't hardly see through it. It's getting stuff. They say it costs $900 to replace. I was looking online, and there was an outfit, a Q screen that you could get a screen for about $150 and then have it installed. Is that a good idea, or do you have to replace the whole unit?
Well, what I don't know that company that you talk about, but I wonder if they are getting recycled original equipment units out of other vehicles. Like you could do yourself on CarDash Part, one of our partners. You could find someone that has. You can look under information screen, or on some vehicles you got to look under radio, and then it breaks it down into the components. You'll find those out there for sale as they're starting to get a little bit older. This company, I'm guessing, has learned, there's a market here, there's a niche. Let's become specialist in it. Let's understand what it takes to replace them. Let's understand what programming it takes to put them back in another vehicle so we can explain that to customers. And then we'll do an exchange program. And then we'll get them back, and we can fix, what we find to be wrong with them, if it's possible. Use some for parts, use some for remanufacturing. I'm going to guess that's what that company's doing, and they've created a niche in that market, which many people do. But no, you can get a replacement screen without having to go and buy the brand new one. There are some cars that those screens can cost over $3,000.
Oh yeah,
from the factory. And so the recycled original equipment, the ROE stuff, is what you want to look for in that case. And we haven't ran across, in the cars that we work with, any that can't be reused yet from another vehicle without programming or staging. Sometimes you got to program them to get the VIN number into the component so that it knows which system it's on. But that is a very affordable way to go, and a quality way to go, because you're replacing it with a original equipment item, same as it was engineered when they built the car.
Have you seen a lot of cars that on that in the Cadillacs where that screen has been a problem with that, where you can't see through it? It gets the stuff on the top.
Yeah, we have, and I think it's coming from it's only my opinion and guess because of the ones we see and where they're at. I think it's coming from the heat in the car. The sun comes through, the UV rays are affecting it, and then the heat that's generated when the windows are up in the summertime. I think that's what's causing that to happen. We've replaced a number of them, and we've, like Shannon said, we've picked up a used option, put it in the car, programmed them, got them to go. Some of them you don't have to do any programming when you're just doing the TV portion of the screen, the video monitor portion of it. We just put them in and let them go. They're good to go. But we are seeing a lot of infotainment system failures in cars. We used to put radios in all the time because of failed cassettes and CD players back in the day, early 2000s and older. And then they stopped, and radios, I would say, became all but bulletproof from about 2007, except for with the exception of a few that had issues with multi-disc CD changers in dash. They just lasted forever.
Yeah, and or they'd have rocker buttons that people would abuse.
Yep.
That would be kind of some of the things
Worn
you run
off.
across. But, yeah, that screen can be replaced. And also for people that are listening in our hoodies, when you buy a new vehicle, in the owner's manual packet, the owner's packet, there's always a screen or a screen cleaning cloth, just like you'd get when you buy a nice pair of sunglasses. They put a cloth with. I know when you get I haven't bought a TV for a while, but the last Samsung TV I bought in on the owner's packet, they had a nice cloth to clean the screen with. But I think we do get people using wrong chemicals on a lot of these screens, and they just don't play well with the wrong chemicals. You just need to use a light cleaning agent. Very, very, very careful cleaning needs to be done on those screens also.
Not Windex, not any other kind of cleaners. It has to specifically say for a video type screen, like your TV or your car.
Because some of those touch screens even have a different coating on them yet. So
Yep.
Typically, any cleaning you need to do can be done with that cloth if you keep it in your glove box or in your center console, and you can clean it up just fine. When the key's off, just wipe it down, and you can usually clean it up just fine.
Yeah, we put tons of them in. I can't tell you how many people. It's at least once a week somebody's calling saying, I have a problem with my touchscreen in my car. And unfortunately, they control pretty much everything in your dash. I've got one right now. The screen goes out, and you can't adjust the temperature at all because it's through the screen. So your radio, your temperature, all your car settings are right there on the screen. So you're out of luck.
Well, thanks for the call.
Okay,
we appreciate it, Rod.
You bet. All right, we're going to take a short break here. We will be right back in just a second. (866-594-4150) from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show.
You know, I love my automotive news, and the actual publication Automotive News is one that I always am reading. If I'm in a hurry, I can grab their final assembly page, and they've always got some really neat, quick stories in there. And this particular one caught my eye with the teasing question in the headline: what weighs about 4.5 tons and has a big trunk in the front?
An elephant.
If you said either an adult male Asian elephant or the 2022 GMC Hummer EV pickup, you're correct. But only one of them can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3 seconds. We assume an elephant can't crab walk either, though zoology isn't really our area of expertise, the story goes on to say. GMC confirmed just recently that a fully loaded 2022 Hummer Edition 1 will weigh 9,046 pounds, or a little more than 2 base-level Sierra full-size pickups. It will be more than 900 pounds heavier than the original Hummer H1, and about 700 pounds more than a dual-wheeled Sierra 3500 crew cab diesel. That really surprised me when I read that. But the reason, of course, is the heavy 24-module Ultium battery pack that gives the Hummer EV an estimated 350 miles of range. Batteries make most EVs significantly heavier than their gasoline-powered counterparts. though few, if any, of the other models headed to the dealership in the coming years are likely to match the Hummer's curb weight, which was first reported to GMTrucks.com. And few will also top the Edition's Edition 1's price of $112,595. Then again, Hummer isn't very representative of most EVs in the pipeline in General Motors or any other automaker. They designed it to be a super truck for those who can afford to have a ton, or rather 4.5 tons of fun driving. A spokesman for the brand said, unlike an elephant, the Hummer's bound to shatter expectations of what an electric vehicle can do. That is a heavy vehicle.
It's basically the same weight as my truck.
Yeah.
So I don't consider it heavy, but for that vehicle, I'm thinking, yeah, it seems a little heavier than what I would have expected. If you had threw me and say, Russ, give me a guess, I'd say 6,100. But
yeah, see, I would have probably guessed somewhere around 7,000 pounds.
I'm like a ton off.
Yeah, that's a heavy vehicle. Because you've seen the commercials. If you go to YouTube, they've got a great promotional video for that vehicle.
Oh, they spent so much on that.
Yeah, it's just a really
it's great.
A kick it in the rear video, and you'd enjoy it. That vehicle has capabilities beyond belief. And when I hear that 0 to 60 time in 3 seconds, and then I know that it weighs that much, 4.5 tons, that's crazy.
That's
crazy.
Of 3,600-pound cars that won't do that.
That's
half the weight.
The power and torque to do that and propel that is
that's
crazy.
The one that they're advertising over 11,000 foot-pounds of torque. That's a lot of torque. But you're going to need that to propel that vehicle that quick. And still, 350-mile range is what they're guessing. That's quite a lot of juice.
It'll be interesting to pay attention to how that all goes with the launch. I mean, this whole world is changing in the vehicles. You know, we love our internal combustion engines, and we know that there's opportunities to keep those vehicles on the road a long time.
I like the new Shelby Ford truck.
Yeah, that's cool.
Lots of gas there.
But we've got to pay attention to the types of fuels we're using. The higher octane fuels will be what'll be available to keep things going. The biofuels are a great option as we move forward in this transition time between the internal combustion engines and the increased volume of the electric fleet that we're going to see.
If you want to keep gas cars around longer, they're going to have to do that. So there's some people that, screaming about hating the electrics, and there's people screaming about hating ethanols. Well, it's coming. So if you're going to have to embrace something, or you're just going to get what you're going to get. All right. This is another edition of Under the Hood. Take care, everybody. We will see you next episode. Hi, everybody out there on the stream. We're still here. Well, we're kind of here. We're getting ready to go. But thanks again for listening and watching Under the Hood. Make sure you send us questions. If you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, we're watching over there. I'm not watching that. Chris is watching it. But today I am watching it. Unfortunately, Chris isn't here, but he'll be back next week. But you can send us questions, and we may just answer them right there off the screen like we did today with a couple of them. So, see ya.